Hello and welcome to LaunchLeft Podcast. I'm your host, Rain Phoenix. Today's very special guest is Don Was, and he'll be launching Maya Delilah. Don't forget, rate and subscribe. Follow us on all socials at LaunchLeft.
Hi, Rain. How you doing?
Hi, Don.
It's really good to see you.
It's really good to see you too. What an absolute pleasure. I just wanted to start out by saying welcome and thank you. Thank you for your contributions to culture and music, and unbelievable. What a storied career, but obviously it's almost like a storied art project. Like, you seem to have just always done what you felt guided to do in all kinds of different areas, which I really am inspired by, because I've been having this conversation with a lot of people lately. Like, there are some people who pick a lane and they do that so well, and it's one thing, whether you're songwriting or a musician, and I know so many of them, and I'm often, been like, man, I should have done that, maybe, like picked one lane, but I've always bounced around myself, so I'm always inspired by people who bounce around and do it so well, and you, sir, are one of them.
Well, that's very, very sweet of you to say. I was just trying to do stuff that looked like fun.
Yeah.
There's not like a deeper thing, but there's some degree of it designed to not getting pigeonholed. I think that's, if you get pigeonholed, like after we did Nick of Time, I started getting people who were sending me female blues guitar players.
Right.
Maybe even redheaded.
Right.
Female blues guitar. It was so specific.
Right.
And I thought, man, don't get pigeonholed, because when whatever it is you get known for, when that appears to be out of vogue, then you're screwed. If you want to be around for a long time, don't let them catch it in their sights. They can kill you if they can't find you. So I went from Bonnie to Iggy Pop to Neil Diamond to Bob, really right in a row, to Paula Abdul to Bob Dylan, Neil Diamond, Iggy Pop, Bob Seger. Eventually you just become the old guy. They get you with age eventually, but staying out of people's sight. And something, it's not that different. You're trying to get through to people on an emotional level, and we all have the same emotions, and emotions aren't different for people who listen to jazz than they are to people who listen to bluegrass. People are all the same inside. So it's just, you're traveling the same highway, but in a different vehicle. Put it that way.
Yeah, but it's that soulfulness and that creative wish to find those feelings in people and awaken them that I really admire about your work, and that you were able to do different genres and produce different artists, but also you're a musician in your own right, obviously. You were a documentary filmmaker, you were a musical director, you are all these things, I should say. You're a musical director, film composer, radio host. I mean, Blue Note Records alone would be a huge wow to me, since 2011 that you've been president of Blue Note Records, which their mission statement is so beautiful and speaks to that same kind of wish to connect to the true feelings in people around music and art, and that in a world that doesn't necessarily espouse those qualities in the creative as what you should want to aspire to, right? Bringing out, it's like the true core essence of what art is really about and what it's meant to do, and its transformative nature. And I just absolutely am, gobsmacked that when I look deeply into your work, that at the core, that's the root, it seems like, of everything you do. Like, that's what you are trying to awaken, and I love that.
If you go for that, you stand a chance of at least having some of the things you do become kind of timeless, which is what you want in the end. You don't. There's some records I can listen to from like the 80s where I know I can tell you what month they were recorded because I recognize the synthesizer presets that everybody in the world used when this certain Roland synth came out, or you know, and or a certain drum machine. You can tell the Lin 1 from the Lin 2. And you recognize the sounds that are in there, and everybody used them. And when you listen to most of those records now, that sounds like 1983. If you listen to Hey Jude, Bridge Over Troubled Water, that's timeless, you know.
Mm,
That's a good
mm,
thing to strive for. And you do that by rather than chasing fashion, by
yeah,
chasing people's hearts.
yeah, yeah, well said. Yeah, yeah, that kind of, there is something to be said for that timeless, approach, which I think you're right, is just about, like, what's actually gonna move humanity to feel. That's really all that counts, not like, the popular moment, because that is fleeting. We know that in everything creative. It's one day it's a fad, the next day it's the dumbest thing anyone would do, you know?
Yeah, you want to
So
transcend that, I think, especially if you want to keep doing it.
right, right.
And that doesn't just apply to producers or engineers or uh, it's musicians and writers. And if you go for the authentic rather than the trendy, you can have a, who's got a career you admire? Neil Young, Willie Nelson,
Mhm,
uh, James Taylor.
mhm.
It's none of those people, Bob Dylan,
Mm,
Bonnie Raitt's got the kind of career. You don't have to have hit singles to have people come see you year after year after year.
yeah,
You just have to speak to their inner emotional lives. You got to address that. Those are the people who endure.
yeah. Well, let's go back then to how even music found you as a young person, and I know you were, raised in Detroit, Michigan. How
Yeah.
cool in the '60s. What a, great place to have dropped in the '60s, to have been born
Best.
into that scene, that music scene. Wow. Do you feel that that music scene came to you first, or did you find music, I'd love to hear how you found music, if you found it younger and through your family, or how first you came upon it?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story it's kind of revealing. I'm debating whether to tell it because but it's an honest story. When I was about a year and a half or 2 years old, I remember that there's a song called "My Secret Love." I think it was a Doris Day hit, right? And it would go to this big. It had this big. I guess it was the chorus where she opened and go, "Now I shouted from the highest hill." So I used to do that in a little squeaky voice as a like 2-year-old, and I'd go to that high note and my voice would break. And I remember my grandparents just wanting me to do it over and over again. They got such a kick out of it. And it did occur to me that, whoa, I'm getting over with this. Which is what all people do. We're all looking for a way to get over and reproduce and not starve, the little things like that, but it actually can cause a lot of damage to people. I think that's what when people freak out in their 40s, as they are wont to do, as Carl Jung so beautifully described in a midlife transition. I believe that that's because when we're little kids, we learn what helps us get over and what doesn't help us get over. And if like let's say you like wearing crazy shoes. Okay. You like really flamboyant shoes and you go to school and everybody teases you for that. You think, well, maybe I'll just keep this to myself. And you lock all this stuff up inside of you and it's protected by armor so that in your 20s you can get over it. You can get into something that's going to support you and help you create a family and find a mate and all that. And when you get to be about 40, could be 38, could be 50, the armor that you build to house all these things that are part of you that you kind of kept close to the vest, that armor starts to rust and the light starts shining through. And you have to deal with reconciling the person you've become with the person inside the armor. And I think that's what they call midlife crisis, which is not really a crisis. It's a great opportunity to realign who you are and who you become and what your dreams are and how your dreams differ from reality and how to reconcile everything. It's a great opportunity to readjust for the second half of your life. Uh,
Profound spiritual awakening, that sounded like to me. It's true. It's like it crack open and the light comes out and you have to,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
reconcile. Yeah, I think
that's
that's
it.
really powerful,
So,
and
but
true. I
but
remember it
but
well.
yeah, but I definitely learned that by playing music, you can get over.
Yeah.
That was
Very young.
my earliest lessons.
And not even 2. That's incredible. Well, what did make you gravitate to those Detroit bands? Iggy Pop, obviously
Yeah,
MC5, Bob Seger, and The
yeah.
Last Hurt. I mean, unbelievable. The proto-punk bands coming out of Michigan at that time. Were you
Sure.
just at the perfect age, or did you go have to hunt them down and find was it
It was
obvious? Were they on radio show? Like, how did you find them?
Well, at first it was counterculture, which was the coolest
Right.
thing if you're a teenager. I
Right.
was, 15, 16 when all these bands started playing. I saw the MC5 open for the Dave Clark Five, and I was there to see the Dave Clark Five. And the MC5 were a local band from Lincoln Park, Michigan. They were still wearing suits, but they blew the Dave Clark Five off the stage, and the Dave Clark Five were really good. But there was something extra going on with the MC5, even in that earliest phase. And I think it's got everything to do with the character of Detroit, and particularly the character of Detroit in the 50s and 60s. After World War II, people came from all over the world to work in the factories there, and they brought their cultures with them. So you had this whole jambalaya of different
Mm.
ethnicities and different types of music and different types of food. And after a while, it starts to merge, and you get a peculiar regional sound that happened. Uh, it was almost the indigenous music of Detroit was shaped by global influence. But there's also something about Detroit being a one industry town. It, everybody was in the same boat. My parents were both teachers, right? So
Mhm.
if if the auto companies had a bad year and laid off workers, they'd move away to find another job, and they'd take their families with them. And the kids would leave, and then teachers would get laid off because auto sales were down, and barbers would
Mm.
get laid off, and waitresses would get laid off. So everybody was in the same boat, and as a result, there was very little point in putting on any airs about who you were. Nobody I knew, like, leased a Mercedes to impress their friends because everyone knew it was bullshit, It was like, "Come on, man, we're all in the same boat. Our lives depend on the success or failure of the auto business year after year." When that happens, you get a real honest and down to earth and genuine population. The people of Detroit, I like they're very straight ahead people, no bullshit, and the music reflects that. If you listen to
Mm.
John Lee Hooker, he's, to me, the ultimate Detroit guy.
Mm.
Uh, it's as raw as it comes, so raw that you don't know if it's about to fall apart. Are they even gonna get through this song? Does
Yeah.
does the bass player have any idea what the chords are? But the sum total of the whole thing is so soulful, and and it grooves like crazy, even though it's raw. That's Detroit.
Mm.
So John Lee Hooker was that, but so was Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. That was that, which had a tremendous influence. on the MC5 and the Stooges. Mitch Ryder is kind of like the godfather of Detroit rock and roll because he really fused R&B and and rock and roll in a way that no one had before. I don't think he could because he's an authentic R&B singer. He
Mm,
doesn't sound like a white kid,
mhm,
and and he grew up singing in doo-wop, racially mixed doo-wop bands, and he was authentic,
mm,
and that's who he is. So you put that against garage band electric guitars, and that's a startling sound. And you can hear that the Stooges were just about this sinewy groove, man, that underneath they're almost James Brown, in terms of adhering to a groove that just carries you away. It's a different groove than James Brown, but they were influenced by that, a repetitive kind of thing. MC5, if you really break down the things, and because I played with Wayne Kramer and some of the MC5
he's such a
redos,
nice man.
he sent me the multi-tracks. I'd play the songs right, so I got to really listen to the bass parts. And he was listening to James Jamerson more than he was listening to Paul McCartney, definitely. Not that Paul, there's a lot of commonality between Jamerson and Paul. I'm certainly not denigrating Paul as a bass player because he's a marvelous lyrical, uh, harmonic genius bass player. But there's the MC5 has got a soul music underpinning to it, despite the roaring guitar sound, right?
Mm,
That's kind of Detroit. Jack White, same thing. Even Funkadelic, which is basically a Detroit band, even though they originally came from Jersey, they saw the MC5 plan and they said, "Well, we can come up with a different way to keep an R&B groove going against this, but employing electric guitars like that."
wow,
So,
and did you
Detroit was
act
awesome. Yeah.
did you actually see I heard that you saw them my friend Rich told me you saw them in, like, a school gymnasium, both Funkadelic and MC5, like, when the
Well, they were all different events, but the Parliaments, which is what they were called when they put out
Right.
first version of "I Just Want to Testify," the 45 of it, they played a sock hop at my junior high school. I was in ninth grade and was in the upper gym, and a
Oh
sock
my
hop
god.
was they had a dance in the gym, and you had to take your shoes off
Ah, that's
because you
what that
couldn't scuff
means.
up the floor of the gym. Yeah, so everyone danced in their socks, right? So
Amazing.
so it was a kind of a form of payola, actually, because you'd hire one of the disc jockeys from the AM radio station to come and MC your dance, and he'd get paid. And if you wanted your
Mm,
record played, you'd do a personal appearance and lip sync your record, uh, and he
mm.
wouldn't he wouldn't share his $200 fee with you. You'd do that to get played on the radio. So
Wow.
George Clinton and the Parliaments, who at that time were just a five-piece vocal group like the Temptations,
Mhm.
except they were dressed like hippies. They didn't wear
Interesting.
tuxes or
Right.
footwear. So it didn't. I don't know if it predated Jimi Hendrix, but it was synchronous with Jimi Hendrix,
Mm,
with just an R&B performer, but they're looking like hippies.
right,
And no one knew what to make of it.
right.
It was the coolest thing. Uh, so yeah, I saw them. The Stooges played at my high school.
That's crazy.
I saw the MC5 and Ted Nugent's band, the Amboy Dukes, used to play at a geodesic dome at a shopping center right behind my house. So it's called the Mump,
Wow.
and they didn't serve liquor, so 16-year-olds could go.
Oh, that's good.
And so we used to see them play all the time. I could
Yeah.
hear them from my bedroom. I was that close to the place.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And you started, Was Not Was with your childhood friend, right?
Yeah.
So you grew up with, is David Weiss, is that his
Yep.
name?
Yeah. Mhm.
And so were you guys always doing music when you were teenagers together, but didn't do the band till later? How did that all come to
We
be?
were. The thing that you did in high school was basically you get stoned and you you'd drive to the street called Woodward Avenue, which is like the main drag in Detroit, runs all the way up the city from the foot of downtown. And from about 8 Mile Road to about 18 Mile Road, you just cruise up and down. You pull up next to girls and you try to hit on them, see if you get a phone number. And that was what you did. Uh, and we were unsuccessful, I think, about 99% of the time. So we'd go back to one of our houses dejected, and we both had tape recorders, and we'd start making records, but it was just burning off the steam that would have properly been burned off with a female companion. So we just started doing that, and we never really stopped. But there came a point where we actually, we got access to real recording studios and learned how to make records.
And that became Was Not Was.
That became Was Not Was, which is it started really as a kind of a studio conglomeration. And we were trying to take all the sounds that we grew up with, Detroit jazz, Detroit R&B, and funk, and Detroit rock and roll. And local hero beat poet was John Sinclair, who, was also kind of like the leader of the counterculture in Detroit. And so it's a combination of beat poetry, and maybe it's not a Detroit influence, but Frank Zappa. That first Freak Out album really had a profound effect on us. So we tried to merge all that into one thing, and that became Was Not Was. And then out of that, the musicians that we got closest to became a band, and we started touring.
I remember, I was a big fan of Lounge Lizards in the late 80s, and I was a teen at the time. My brother River and I had our first band then, and started touring up the East Coast, and I do remember that song we would listen to Was Not Was as well, and specifically that song Dad, I'm in Jail or something. I remember that. I was like, wait a second, I know that song. I remember that from being a kid, and we just thought that was so funny, and the way it was delivered cracked us up. I'm happy. I love it.
I like it here.
That's it. I like it here. It's great.
Here's what happened with that song, because it's a really super important lesson for musicians. The guy at our record company, a guy named Michael Zilka, who started Z Records, which was the label we were assigned to, great guy, really had a great ethos that he brought to music. He made quirky dance records that were cool and literate. That's what he was interested in. He publishes books now. He was calling us. We were in Detroit making these records, and he said, I want a cassette every night. You're like my babies. I want to hear what you. So in those days, that meant sitting there after the session, which was usually at 9 o'clock in the morning, and running a cassette in real time. And there were no assistants, so that meant making a cassette and driving to FedEx at the end of the session. So after about 2 or 3 days, that became really oppressive. So we thought, let's put an end to this by sending him the most outrageous thing we can do. So very quickly, we programmed a bunch of sequencers and drum machines with the volume off. So we had no idea what was going to be playing. And then I said to Dave, just go out there and yell something. And Dave McMurray, our sax player, stood behind him. It was on one mic, and David improvised that whole thing. So it was written, recorded, and mixed all in one take.
I love it.
And then we put that on the cassette, and the idea was to send it to him and have him say, all right, you don't have to send me every stupid thing you do, right? So I FedExed it to him, got up super early the next morning because I couldn't wait to hear what his reaction was going to be when he got it in New York. And of course, he called up and said, "It's the most wonderful thing you've ever done." And it was right. It's been in like 10 movies, and the lesson was just stop thinking and be yourself.
Yeah.
Just be true to who you are, and that's who we are at the core. Everything else was finesse and nuance and at least somewhat thoughtful and intentional. But there was no intention behind this except to just be real. And that's a really good lesson to learn for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that gem. Absolutely. I'm glad I brought it up. It was like
Yeah.
that was one that stuck out to me that I was like, "Oh, remember that song? It was
Yeah,
so
because
great. It was
it's
moving."
truth. It is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, now you have, the Pan Detroit Ensemble, is that right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And that's, like, the new project you're working on,
Yep.
and it's made up of jazz musicians in Detroit right now, like, existing badass jazz musicians in Detroit. What made you wanna go home again and kind of do a Detroit-based project?
Well, someone gave me a gig which came with a deadline. Terrence Blanchard called me and said, "You want to perform one night in the series that he was doing?" And I said, "Yes," but I didn't have anything together. Didn't have a band, hadn't had a band for a really long time. One of the things I learned early on, there was a point, like somewhere around like maybe 1990, 1991, where in rapid succession, I produced a bunch of my heroes, Brian Wilson, Bob Dylan, Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson, Rolling Stones, like all in the same year. And watching these masters, these geniuses up close, man, it gave me the worst case of writer's block ever, man, because anytime I sat down at a piano to write something, I think, well, man, Brian Wilson's like a mile away. Just give him the lyric, man, and you're not as good as him. So I didn't do anything for about 5 or 6 years except just produce, you know, my heroes, right? And then I thought about it, and it hit me. I was thinking specifically about Willie and bemoaning the fact that I'd never be as good as Willie.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, that's okay, man, because there's something you can bring to music that he can't. He didn't drop acid and go see the MC5 when he was 16. He didn't grow up in that home milieu. He didn't go to the Fox Theater as a teenager to see the Motown Revue, which was like Marvin Gaye and the Temptations and
Oh,
Martha and the Vandellas,
yes.
like playing to a half-empty theater, a matinee.
Ah,
So if I just the if I just would realize that the thing that made me different from Willie Nelson was not a problem, it was my superpower. I can't be him, he can't be me.
mhm,
So, I may not be as good as him, in fact, I never will be close, but there's a thing I can bring because of who I am.
yeah,
So, when it came time to put a band together, I thought, "Don't try to be Robert Glasper. Don't try to be Charles Lloyd. Don't try to be John Coltrane. Just get in a room with like-minded individuals and see what you come up with." So
mm,
that's what we did. A couple of these guys in the band, Dave McMurray, Luis Resto, I've been playing with them for 45 years. Dave McMurray's the guy who's blowing sax on "Hello, Dad, I'm in Jail." He's on Blue Note Records now. Louis Resto, I hired him for his first session when he was a teenager. He's gone on
wow,
to co-produce and co-write with Eminem. He wrote "Lose Yourself," won an Oscar for it. So these are guys I've known forever, and we just know each other. We know where the musical conversation's going to go. And what happened was that we got 9 people together in a room, and everyone locked, like immediately. We're making a new album now, and one of the songs on the album is the first take of running through a song the very first day we all got together. I just called a rehearsal in the studio, and fortunately, we set up microphones, and it just felt comfortable and familiar from the get-go. And even though we've been playing together less than a year, it feels like we've known each other forever because we all grew up listening to the same stuff and
mm,
we grew up in the same environment. So the lesson is be yourself. The
100%.
thing that makes you different from everybody else is your strength,
Yeah.
not a weakness.
100%. I think I'm wondering too now, hearing that, would you agree that that helped to form, like, the trust that some of those legacy artists that you mentioned have in you, also in regard to the tribute albums that you've been entrusted to, and the multi-tracks, and you know, the hidden vaulted tapes of some of, the Rolling Stones, or that you're doing reissues, that you were entrusted to that. My gut feeling would be like, wow, obviously you, aside from befriending them and getting to know each of them and them feeling closer to you as a person, that they could see that you're always searching, it seems like, for the realness in something, and you're also realizing in yourself, like, I got to be who I am. I have to be real to actually say something. Like, I don't need to be competing. I need to just be who I am, or, and that led to some of that. Like, so that's a lot of trust to have you be that guy that's often gone to for those sort of legacy acts. Do you feel
Yeah,
that?
I think for anybody, you have to, um, if you're gonna hire a producer, you gotta open up, be vulnerable, and let them see what's really going on. If you try to
Mm,
hide from your producer, it's kind of a waste of time. So in some ways, it's like being a shrink, you know?
yeah,
You get inside the person,
yeah.
and, you gotta treat that with respect. Look, there are many ways to produce a record. Some producers are auteur producers. Daniel Lanois is someone who comes to mind. Friend of mine, tremendous admiration for him, but we make records in a really different way. Daniel weaves this tapestry that's uniquely his, and if you want him to produce your record, you're going to be placed into that tapestry. There's nothing, no judgment about that at all. He's made incredible records. Maybe the best Bob Dylan records ever, were made when he was somehow involved in it. Uh, so I have tons of respect for it. It's just not what I do.
Mm,
The way I approach producing is to try to work with really great people and help them be the best version of who they are, not to leave my thumbprint on their forehead.
mm,
That just doesn't. Uh, I don't know why you do that.
mm.
Well, I do know why you do it. If you have this strong artistic vision as a producer, and and that's what you want to chase, like I think like R&B producers like Babyface. Babyface would make these records. He could sing them, and then a singer come in and he'd give you the phrasing on how to do it. He was as much the
Wow.
artist. That's a perfectly legitimate way to produce records. Another great way to produce records is to go play golf while the band's in the studio and come in at 2 o'clock and say, the bridge sucks. Make it better and leave. That's maintaining some objectivity. That's got value too. I don't.
Right,
There's no correct way to do it,
right.
but my way is to respect who the artist is, and try to help them be that without agenda.
Yeah, the yeah, and it sounds like what you're saying is the correct way is what's correct for, you know, you, or in your case, like, you really focus on the artist and who they're at the soul level, who they are, and how to bring that out and show that.
Yeah.
And different producers, what's correct for them is bringing their stamp, or like you said, bringing their absence and then coming in with a fresh take,
Yeah.
which is also, all of them are valid. But I imagine that with you explaining the way you produce it, even more makes me think about some of these legacy artists, and how deeply the connection must have been, because when you're working like that with these artists who've been in it forever and know their shit and know how they like their stuff, but they're also open, and you're, like you said, more in that shrink position of really seeing the full spectrum of their psychology and how they came to be, and they entrust that to you. Like, that must be so rewarding to produce and then finish and see the results of that communion, of a great producer and an artist that are like legacy together. And it shows in the work that you've done with those artists. It's
Well,
remarkable.
thank you, Ray. I mean,
So cool.
it's a big thrill to be around the best people. People like Bob Dylan, man. Like
Yeah.
he's he's done. incredible things that no one can really touch for
Yeah.
like 60 some years.
Mhm.
That's amazing. What's going on with him?
Yeah.
At one time I asked him, I said, how come you can write Gates of Eden and I can't? And he said, well, if it's any consolation to you, I remember moving the pencil over the page, but I didn't write it. It was coming through me. And
Amen.
I actually just thought he was trying to make me feel better. But then as I worked with more and more people, the really great ones will all tell you the same thing.
Absolutely.
They don't know where it comes from,
Yeah.
but there are people who can channel the stuff that'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is, I imagine like a creative ether out there, right?
Mm.
And all the good ideas are up there.
Mm.
But the great ideas, Gates of Eden, Visions of Johanna, that's floating at all the way at the top.
Mm.
And who's got an arm long enough to reach up to the very top and pull those things down?
Mm.
Very few people do. And so being able to watch them work, watch them write, watch them create, wait, what a great thrill and learning experience. You can learn a lot.
Mhm. What a legacy
Yeah,
too. Yeah, for you too, like you said, like to be in the company of those people, but to be one of those people and to be a multi-platform one of those people. Dawn, you just make my heart sing, and I'm so grateful you spent these 38 minutes or so with me. I feel like we could talk for 2 hours, but I see Miss Maya Delilah in the waiting room and thought maybe we ought to bring her in and add her to
fantastic.
this
Let's do that.
conversation.
Good.
All
Yeah,
right, here we
good.
go. Ha ha! We love it. We love.
Well,
Hi, Maya.
Hello.
We love that The Rock was your screensaver.
I forget that that's there every
oh, that's a good one. Very good choice.
Hilarious.
Oh, thank you, thank
Is,
you.
is, is The Rock your soulmate?
Your
Your
spirit
alter
animal?
ego? Yes.
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's my therapist. Bad.
Good.
I hear you're taking a little break from rehearsal just to talk to us, and I'm so grateful. Welcome to LaunchLeft. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Such an honor.
Yeah, your music. I've been listening to your record. Oh my gosh, I feel so lucky. Like I got a little advance copy,
Oh,
um, and it's just absolutely stunning. Your voice is so special.
thank you so much. Thank
Like,
you.
I don't know. I hear. We were just talking about it, Dawn and I, this sort of this ether where all good things are beamed to people, you know? And I feel like your voice, even your writing, all of it is there. But when I heard your voice, I had that like visceral response of the angels singing. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like, wow, I felt
thank you
so
so much.
special.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Oh,
This is,
that's very kind to say.
yeah. And this is your first record. This will be your debut album.
Yeah, I
The
know.
long,
It's so surreal.
the long way round. That's a very Brit way of saying the long way around.
Oh, is that what you guys say? I didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad because I've been told so many times that people think I'm American and that I should like be more British. So I'm glad that maybe there's something in there that people will just be able to tell straight away.
Yeah, they'll be like, "What's round? The long way round?" I just don't get it, like, what?
The riddle,
Like
no one knows.
Yeah, so that must be exciting for you, though. This is your first record and on Blue Note. I mean,
Yeah,
that's pretty
I know.
cool.
Such an honor. I pinch myself every day.
Have you all met a lot, worked together already, or are you, is this like, share how you came to know each other?
Well, we've known each other for a while now because she really did come the long way. um, uh, one of the younger A&R people who work at Blue Note, Alex Anastasi, who's really got a great intuitive sense of what is extraordinary, spotted Maya. I think it was during. I think I remember talking to you during COVID. When I remember talking to you from the RV I was moving around
Yeah,
the first time.
yeah.
And so she was building this incredible following, playing guitar on the floor of her bedroom and making these little videos for social media that were really becoming popular, and they drew Alex's attention. And if you watched it, you couldn't help but notice that there was something special going on with Maya. That what she was doing, a lot of people can get attention with pyrotechnics and, squeezing a million notes, doing acrobatics basically. And that's not what she was doing. What she was doing was incredibly soulful and moving. And it was kind of wild to see it, just from a bedroom floor like that. Now, a lot of artists, I don't think, successfully make the transition from TikTok artist to recording artist. And it's been remarkable to watch Maya put this record together and try different things and experiment and land on her own voice, which is extraordinary. And I think she's accomplished something that very few people have been able to pull off, which is to go from that kind of social media phenomenon to super deep artist, and to make an album this sophisticated as a
Yeah.
debut album. That's so rare, man.
Yeah.
So I really believe Maya is going to be around for a long, long time, and that people are going to be listening to her records 100 years from now. And it's it's been great to get to know her and to watch really from a distance. I haven't been to the studio ever, for any of her sessions, but to just watch her figure it out. And I guess that's the title, right? Long Way Round. It was a long journey to get to this album, right?
Oh, thank you so much. That's yeah. I mean, I think being given the chance to make an album in the way that I made it, and it's thanks to you, Don, for putting me in the room with the right people and the people to bring sides out of me that I didn't know, and ways of making music that I didn't know were possible, and just kind of everything that went into this record was definitely pushed by you. And yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I wonder what it would what it would sound like if it hadn't gone down this route, and I'm so happy that will never know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to. I mean, there were definitely some false starts, some things we tried that didn't work, but it's part of the discovery process. I think, having I've only been on. I'm old. I'm 72. So I've running a record company for 13 years. That's just a small part of my life. For the most part, I was on the other side of it, and I could observe that the biggest mistake record companies make is to sign someone that they see a spark in, and then as soon as they're signed, they try to change them and make them adapt to whatever is trendy in that exact moment. And we've really tried to do the exact opposite, which is find someone who's got that spark and then help them realize that spark almost in a fashion vacuum. Like,
I
just
like that.
be your this is what we were talking about earlier in the thing.
Yeah.
Being yourself
Yeah.
is your super strength.
Yep.
Oh.
Superpower.
And I do think if you listen to this record, you know Maya. You'll
Yeah.
know about her. And not only that, but you see yourself in there too. That's the beauty of it. It's you can relate to these songs.
Exactly.
I Why should a 72-year-old man be able to relate to 22-year-old English girl's songs? But I can, because
Yeah.
she's a great communicative artist, and she's her songs penetrate, they get under your skin, and you can find your own way to hang your inner emotional life. Great songs, and that's what she's got.
Yep, and that's what all great songs do, and it's, like, incredible that the joining of, you all finding each other, or you developing Maya, or offering her wonderful people to work with and bringing that out. It's like now that's happening, it was all there, but it's like awakening that and finding the space for it and the time. I mean, I think a lot of what can be somewhat depressing for emerging or smaller artists is not the developing of artists is gone. And there's not a lot of guidance either. And there are so many wonderful artists out there that have a voice, that want it to grow, want to find themselves, but don't have the resources really to do all those things. So it always warms my heart when I see that happening. And this is a wonderful example of that. I mean, your lyrics are so soulful and poignant, and like you said, timeless, where, I'm 52, you're 72, you're 22. There are big jumps in generations there, but we can all relate because they're saying something that's touching, like, on a soul level, all of us, and that's the best kind of songwriting, is that timeless. This is all funny because Dawn and I had a conversation before you hopped on, and these themes keep keep coming back that we start talking about. It's all within your music, really, and your voice. Is there something or a song that you're most excited about on the album, or something that you most have taken from the experience of making the album that has been transformative for you? Is there something you can share about that process?
100%. I think the biggest transformative thing for me was making, at least, I think, maybe just half the album, 6 songs at least, in this studio in Devon that Don recommended, that this man called Pete Miles owns. And he's such an analog guy, and he records everything on tape. He hasn't really heard any music past the 80s. He doesn't really have Wi-Fi. You're kind of just like in a proper space for like 5 days where you're listening to music in the purest form, making music in the purest form. And that's kind of, it completely changed my way of making music. And I'd come with a group of writers and musicians, and we'd write songs in the morning and record them in the afternoon, just like 1 or 2 takes for the live band. And like that's what half the album is, at least. And
Wow.
when we'd wake up each day, we'd put on a vinyl in the morning as we'd have breakfast, and that would set the tone for the music of the day. And I was super into listening to music that I listened to in my childhood and making the music sound nostalgic. And I kind of said when this record was done that my biggest hope for it is that it sounds nostalgic to someone that I don't know and that's never met me or never listened to my music before, and that they can feel that. And I think it's just like going back to my roots of music and lyrically, and like kind of, I don't know, there's just something in it where I hope that it feels comforting to someone and feels like a kind of warm childhood hug. And I think most of that process was learned and done during my time in Devon making those songs.
Wow. And were you on a social media fast during that time?
Oh yeah.
Good for
Anytime
you.
anytime I can be, I'll take it.
I know, it's such a big responsibility, that whole digital part of an artist's life now. Sounds like you're really good at that, though. Sounds like that's how you were even discovered. So good for you. But I'm glad to hear you took a moment away from that. Are your family really excited for you to make a record and put it out? I imagine like your friends and family are pretty stoked.
Yeah, my parents are like big music people, big music fanatics, and showed me all the music that I grew up to love. And we've all listened to vinyl forever. And yeah, they're very, very excited.
And do you plan to tour and all that once the record comes out, or play some shows?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of in the works of figuring out exact like bigger tours. I've got a record store tour coming up when the album's out, the week of the album launch around the UK. So I'll just be playing the record by myself in record shops and selling vinyls and stuff, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, bigger touring plans are coming soon.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I hope I get to catch you live soon. That would be amazing. And I've already shared your record and told people, like, it's coming the 28th. You need to save this. You're going to love it.
Thank you so much.
It's so beautiful. Congratulations and on working with Dawn. And I mean, what a treat. Thank you both so much for being on the show. Is there anything that you wanted to share about how maybe, I mean, I'm sure we'll put this also in our YouTube, how to find you and everything, but is there anything either of you want to share that you're working on that you want the world to know about that I haven't spoken about or brought up, or
No,
anything
you
you want to
covered
share?
it. One thing I would like to add, and you're both very sweet for giving me credit for stuff, but this was an incredible team effort. I'm really proud of the whole Blue Note team. Alex, who hadn't mine's the first artist that he signed, and
Wow.
he's been incredibly devoted. He went to the sessions, and he hadn't made a record before, and his instincts were so finely tuned. But everybody involved, from Bridie, the product manager, just everybody who's been involved with it in the whole company, really wanted the best things for Maya and had the patience not to push, until everything was right. And they've been really supportive. I'm real proud of the whole effort. It's a real group effort that laid this foundation for her to become who she is, and it's cool. And I'm proud of you, Maya. You did a spectacular job here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the whole team is incredible. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, Don, but our very first call, or maybe one of the calls just before I signed with you guys, was, I remember you saying you can make whatever music you want, and then I think you said, "Make a 20-hour-long psychedelic record for all I care. Just make a record." And I really, that has been my experience being signed to you guys, is that you just want the artists to make music that they love, and it's not like any other label where they're just pushing for you to make hits. It's like pure music, and everyone is so supportive of that, and it's like nothing I've ever experienced, nothing any of my musician friends have ever experienced, and I feel so grateful for that.
Real nice. Good.
Well, it sounds like, Dawn, as president of Blue Note, you really are, maintaining that mission statement of the record label, but by offering that space for artists to do that. And it really is the power of community at work. Like, it takes a village, it really does. And gratefully for an artist like Maya Delilah, hells yeah. I'm glad that you found your village and that they're all supporting you, and really excited for your career to take off in this first debut record. So all of you out there, go get Maya Delilah. Let's see, what was it? It's a long title, and I'm not British. No, I'm kidding. Maya Delilah, the long way around. The long way around. So go out and get Maya Delilah, the long way around. All right, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray.
Lovely speaking with you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed speaking with you. Yes, really good questions,
Oh,
and
thanks.
you have great insight into things. I enjoyed the chat.
LaunchLeft aims to create an intentional space that highlights and empowers all artists for whom radical creativity is not a choice, but a necessity. LaunchLeft begins with music, but its ultimate aim is to launch left-of-center artists in all creative fields.